I was lying in a hospital bed, tubes snaking from my arms, when my sister walked in with her lawyer. Not to thank me, not to comfort me, to make sure I'd signed the waiver. Did you do it? Claire asked, not even bothering to lower her voice. Did you sign away all parental rights? I stared at her, my body still aching from the egg retrieval procedure they'd rushed me through. 37 eggs. The doctor said it was an unusually high number, that my ovaries had responded almost too well to the hormones they'd pumped into me for weeks. I signed, I whispered. The lawyer, some slick woman in a power suit that probably cost more than my entire wardrobe, smiled and tucked the papers into her briefcase. Perfect. That makes everything clean. No complications down the road. Claire didn't even look at me. She was already on her phone, probably texting her husband Marcus about how they'd successfully secured their genetic material. My genetic material, my eggs that they'd guilted and manipulated and ultimately forced me into giving them. You're doing a beautiful thing, Mom had said 6 months ago when Claire first asked. She's your sister. She can't have children naturally. You have to help her. But it wasn't a request. It was never a request in our family. Claire wanted something, Claire got it. She was the golden child, the successful one, the one who'd married rich and lived in a mansion in Westchester. I was just Maya, the disappointing younger sister who'd dropped out of law school and worked as a paralegal, drowning in student debt. When can we schedule the next retrieval? Claire asked the nurse who came in to check my vitals. Next? I croaked. Claire, you got 37 eggs. That's insurance. She cut me off. Marcus and I want multiple children. We need to make sure we have enough for at least 3, maybe 4 pregnancies. You know IVF doesn't always work on the first try. The nurse looked uncomfortable. She needs at least 3 months to recover before— we'll pay extra, Claire said flatly. Whatever it takes. She's already agreed. I hadn't agreed to multiple retrievals. I'd agreed to one, and only because they'd literally staged an intervention, with Mom crying about how Claire was suffering, how I was being selfish, how family helps family. Dad had been silent, as always, but his disappointment radiated from every pore. That first retrieval happened 2 weeks ago. Now Claire wanted more. I can't, I said. Claire, I can't do this again. It hurt. The hormones made me crazy. I gained 15 pounds. You signed a contract, the lawyer said smoothly, but 3 retrieval cycles. It's all there in the paperwork. My blood went cold. What contract? I only signed the parental rights waiver. Claire finally looked at me, and her expression was pure ice. You really should read things before you sign them, Maya. The waiver included a clause about multiple retrievals. You agreed to provide us with sufficient genetic material for our family planning needs. I tried to sit up, but pain lanced through my abdomen. I didn't agree to that. Well, your signature says otherwise. Claire's phone buzzed and she glanced at it. I have to go. Marcus is waiting. We're meeting with the surrogate agency this afternoon. She paused at the door. Oh, and Mom said you're coming to Sunday dinner. Don't be late. Then she was gone, and I was alone with the lawyer, who was looking at me with something almost like pity. Here's my card, she said quietly. In case you want to review the contract, though I should warn you it's ironclad. You really did sign away everything. After she left, I pulled out my phone with shaking hands and called the one person who might help me, Aunt Ruth, Mom's older sister, who'd been estranged from the family for years after she'd refused to lend Claire money for her wedding. They did what? Ruth's voice came through, sharp and furious, after I explained everything. I didn't know, I sobbed. I thought I was just helping her have one baby. Now she wants 3 more retrievals and I can't, Ruth. The hormones, the pain, she doesn't care. Nobody cares. Can you get out? Leave town? The contract. She said there's a penalty clause. I'd owe them $500,000 if I breach it. Ruth was silent for a long moment. Come stay with me. Bring the contract. Let me look at it. They'll find me. Let them try. But they did find me 3 days later, when I'd finally started to feel safe in Ruth's tiny apartment in Queens. Claire showed up with Mom, and they guilt-tripped Ruth so badly that she asked me to leave, tears streaming down her face. I'm sorry, Maya. I can't fight them. I'm too old, too tired. So I went back. Back to my cramped studio apartment. Back to my job where I could barely focus because I was supposed to start hormone injections again in 2 weeks for the second retrieval. The next 6 months were hell. They extracted eggs from me 3 more times, each retrieval more painful than the last. My body was breaking down. I developed ovarian hyperstimulation syndrome after the 3rd retrieval and nearly died. The 4th retrieval, they had to put me under general anesthesia because I was having panic attacks. Claire got pregnant with the first IVF transfer. She was radiant, glowing, posting photos of her growing belly all over social media while I recovered from my 4th and final egg retrieval, broken. You should be happy, Mom said, when I didn't react with sufficient enthusiasm to the pregnancy announcement. You're going to be an aunt. An aunt. That's all I was. The genetic mother to my sister's child, reduced to a supporting role in my own biological story. Claire had a boy. They named him Christopher Marcus Ashton, and he was perfect. Dark hair, my eyes. God, he had my eyes. And Claire paraded him around like a trophy while I was expected to play the doting aunt. Wanted to hold him? She asked at the hospital, not even an hour after giving birth via surrogate. I couldn't. I physically could not make myself take that baby. Because somewhere deep in my DNA, I knew he was mine in a way that had nothing to do with legal documents or family obligations. Claire noticed my hesitation and her expression hardened. Don't be weird about this, Maya. You knew what you were signing up for. But I hadn't. I hadn't known any of it. 2 years later, Claire was pregnant again. Another surrogate, another one of my eggs fertilized with Marcus's sperm. This time a girl. They named her Sophia. I stopped going to family dinners. I couldn't watch Claire play mother to children who shared my genetics, my features, while treating me like I was some kind of incubator she'd rented and returned. You're being dramatic, Mom said when I tried to explain why I needed distance. Claire gave you $50,000 for your eggs. That's more than fair. $50,000 split over 4 retrieval cycles. $12,500 per retrieval. Plus another $50,000 they'd paid off of my student loans as a bonus. $100,000 total for my genetic legacy, for the trauma of hormone treatments, for the pieces of myself I'd never get back. Claire had spent more than that on her kitchen renovation. I moved to Boston, got a new job, tried to build a life that didn't revolve around my sister's perfect family, but social media wouldn't let me escape. Claire posted constantly: Christopher's first day of school, Sophia's ballet recital, family vacations to the Bahamas. And the children. They kept looking more like me. Christopher had my exact smile, that crooked left incisor. Sophia had my cowlick, the stubborn piece of hair that stuck up no matter what you did to it. They're not yours, I told myself every night. You signed them away, they're not yours. Then I got the call. Claire wanted another baby. She had frozen embryos from my eggs, and she wanted to implant one more. I'm done helping you, I said, the first time I'd ever said no to her. You don't have to do anything, Claire said, her voice tight. We already have the embryos. I'm just calling to let you know as a courtesy. The baby's due in January. Why are you telling me this? Because Mom insisted. She said it would be wrong not to tell you. I hung up. Then I blocked her number, blocked Mom's number, blocked everyone in my family except Aunt Ruth. But I couldn't block the truth. Couldn't block the reality that somewhere in Westchester, 3 children with my DNA were growing up calling another woman Mom. I was 34 years old, single, and completely numb to the world. Then I died. It was stupidly mundane. I was crossing the street in downtown Boston, distracted by a text from Ruth, and a delivery truck ran a red light. I didn't even have time to scream. The impact was instant. One moment I was breathing, thinking, existing. The next moment, nothing. Except it wasn't nothing. I woke up in my childhood bedroom, and I was 18 years old. I sat up in my narrow twin bed, gasping, my hands flying to my chest. No impact wound, no blood. My body was whole, young, completely undamaged. Maya, Mom's voice called from downstairs. Breakfast is ready. You're going to be late for your SAT prep class. SAT prep class. I'd taken the SAT 16 years ago. My hands were shaking as I picked up my phone, a phone I hadn't owned since 2009. The date on the screen confirmed it. June 15th, 2009. 16 years in the past. I stumbled to the bathroom and stared at my reflection. 18 years old. No dark circles under my eyes. No stress lines. No physical evidence of 4 egg retrieval cycles. It was real. Somehow, impossibly, I'd been sent back. I locked the bathroom door and sat on the edge of the tub, my mind racing. I remembered everything. Every moment of pain, every manipulation, every time I'd signed away pieces of myself. I remembered Claire's face when she'd asked me to donate eggs. That would happen 7 years from now in 2016, right after she'd married Marcus. I remembered the lawyer's smirk, the contract, the retrievals, the children. Oh God, the children. Christopher would be born in 2018, Sophia in 2020. The third baby, I'd never met the third baby. That pregnancy would have been happening right around when I died. I had 16 years of knowledge, 16 years of mistakes I'd made, manipulation I'd fallen for, ways my family had used and discarded me. This time, I could change everything. This time I would. The first thing I did was finish high school with perfect grades. I'd been a decent student the first time around, good enough to get into a respectable college. This time, with 16 years of additional life experience, I aced everything. I remembered most of the test questions. I knew exactly what essays would resonate with admissions officers. I got into Harvard Law School's pre-law program with a full scholarship. Claire was 23 in 2009, already dating Marcus, already planning her perfect life. She didn't pay attention to me. In the original timeline, she'd barely noticed me until she'd needed something from me. That was fine. I didn't need her attention yet. I spent the next 7 years building myself into someone she couldn't manipulate. I graduated top of my class. I clerked for a federal judge. I joined a prestigious law firm in Manhattan specializing in reproductive law and family law. By 2016, when Claire married Marcus in a ridiculously expensive wedding that Dad went into debt to help pay for, I was 25 years old and a junior partner at one of the best law firms in New York. Maya's done so well for herself, I heard Mom say to Aunt Ruth at the reception. We're so proud. Aunt Ruth caught my eye across the room and winked. I'd made sure to stay close to her this time to prevent the rift that had isolated her in the original timeline. Claire pulled me aside during this reception, champagne in hand. Can you believe it? She gushed. I'm finally Mrs. Ashton. Congratulations, I said. And I meant it. I needed her to marry Marcus. I needed events to unfold exactly as they had before, at least for a little while longer. We're going to start trying for kids right away, Claire confided. Marcus wants a big family. That's wonderful, I said. Although, she hesitated. The doctor said I might have some fertility issues. Something about my egg quality. We might need IVF. Here it comes, I thought. The setup, the manipulation that would unfold over the next year. But I just smiled and said, I'm sure it'll work out. In the original timeline, Claire's fertility struggles had been real, but not insurmountable. She could have conceived naturally. It might have just taken longer. But she was impatient, and she'd wanted guarantees. More importantly, she'd wanted control over the genetic material, wanted to screen embryos, wanted to use a surrogate so pregnancy wouldn't ruin her body. So she'd convinced herself she needed my eggs because we shared genetics. The babies would still look like family. And she'd convinced our family that I owed this to her because she was older, more established, more deserving of motherhood. The manipulation started slowly. Poor Claire, Mom sighed over Sunday dinner in early 2017. She's been trying to get pregnant for almost a year. The doctors are saying she might need to use donor eggs. That's tough, I said neutrally. It would be different if the eggs came from family, Dad added. Then the baby would still have our genes. I felt Claire's eyes on me from across the table, but I didn't react. I just kept eating my pot roast. Later, Claire cornered me in the kitchen while I was helping clean up. Maya, she said softly, I need to ask you something. What's up? Would you... God, this is so hard to ask. She was tearing up, and I had to admit she was a good actress. Would you consider donating eggs to me? The doctor said that since we're sisters, the baby would basically be like mine genetically. And I know it's a lot to ask, but you're young, you're healthy, and I want a baby so badly. In the original timeline, I'd been moved by her tears. I'd said yes almost immediately. This time, I looked at her calmly and said, I need to think about it. Her face fell. Think about it, Maya. I'm your sister. I know, and this is a huge decision. I need time. How much time? I'll let you know. I walked away, leaving her stunned in the kitchen. I could feel the family's eyes on me as I grabbed my coat and left. Over the next few weeks, the pressure campaign intensified. Mom called me crying. Dad gave me disappointed lectures about family obligation. Even distant relatives I barely knew reached out to tell me I should help my sister. I let them talk. I listened to every guilt trip, every manipulation tactic, every emotional appeal, and then I went to my law firm and talked to the best reproductive rights attorney we had on staff. I need you to help me draft an egg donation contract, I told Patricia Moreland, a sharp-eyed woman in her 50s who'd built her career on protecting women's reproductive rights. For yourself as donor or recipient, she asked. Donor. My sister wants my eggs. Patricia leaned back in her chair. Walk me through the situation. I told her everything. The pressure from my family, Claire's demands, the expectations that I'd just give her what she wanted. And what do you want? Patricia asked. I want to protect myself. I want to maintain my legal rights, and I want to make sure that if I do this, I'm fully compensated and I retain the ability to have a relationship with any children born from my genetic material. Patricia smiled. Now we're talking. Let's draft a contract that makes you an egg donor, not a doormat. We worked on it for 3 weeks. The contract was airtight, comprehensive, and heavily weighted in my favor. Key provisions. I would donate eggs for one retrieval cycle only. I would be compensated $500,000, paid upfront before the retrieval. I would retain all parental rights unless I explicitly signed them away for each individual pregnancy. Any children born from my eggs would legally be informed of my genetic relationship to them by age 10. I would have visitation rights similar to a godparent. If Claire wanted to create additional embryos or use my eggs for future pregnancies, she would need my explicit written consent each time with additional compensation. All medical expenses, including any complications, would be covered by Claire and Marcus for life. They're never going to agree to this, Patricia said as we finalized the draft, especially the parental rights clause. Then they don't get my eggs, I said simply, and you know your family's going to lose their minds. Good. I presented the contract at Sunday dinner, sliding the document across the table to Claire and Marcus. What's this? Claire asked, picking it up. My terms for egg donation. If you want my eggs, these are the conditions. The table went silent as Claire read. I watched her face go from confused to shocked to furious. $500,000, she sputtered. You want $500,000? That's what my genetic material is worth to me. This is insane. You're my sister, not some anonymous donor. Exactly, which is why I want to maintain a relationship with any children born from my eggs. I'm not an incubator you can use and forget. Marcus was reading over her shoulder, his face darkening. These parental rights provisions, you're saying you'd legally be their mother? No, I'm saying I retain the option to assert parental rights. I can choose to waive them for specific pregnancies, but that's my choice, not yours. This is ridiculous, Claire snapped. We wanted to keep this simple. Simple for you, I said. Not simple for me. These are my eggs, my genetics, my future nieces and nephews. I deserve protection and compensation. Mom looked horrified. Maya, you're being so mercenary about this. Claire is family. And family should treat me with respect, not expect me to hand over my genetic material for free. Dad cleared his throat. This is a lot of money, Maya. We could never afford. I'm not asking you to pay. This is between Claire, Marcus, and me. Marcus stood up abruptly. We're not agreeing to this. Find another donor, Claire. They left in a fury with Mom crying and Dad looking at me like I'd betrayed them all. Aunt Ruth, who'd been quiet throughout the dinner, caught my arm as I was leaving. "That was brutal," she said. "That was necessary. They're going to make your life hell." They were going to do that anyway. She studied me for a long moment. "You've changed. You're harder than you used to be." If only she knew. "I'm protecting myself, Ruth, that's all." The family cut me off after that. No more Sunday dinners, no more holiday invitations. Mom sent me a long email about how I'd broken Claire's heart, how I was being selfish and cruel. I didn't care. I kept working, kept building my career, kept living my life. And then, 6 months later, Claire called me. "Maya," she said, and her voice was different, defeated. "I need to talk to you." We met at a coffee shop in Midtown. Claire looked exhausted, older than her 31 years. "We've tried everything," she said without preamble. "Anonymous donors, fertility treatments, even looked into adoption. Nothing feels right. Marcus wants biological children. I want children who look like family." She paused. "Your contract. Can we negotiate? What are you willing to agree to?" We talked for 2 hours. By the end, we'd reached a compromise. I'd donate eggs for 1 retrieval cycle. Compensation, $300,000 upfront, plus all medical expenses. I would retain parental rights until each pregnancy occurred, at which point I could choose to waive them for that specific child. Any children born from my eggs would be informed of my genetic relationship by age 12. I would have standard godparent-aunt visitation rights. For any future pregnancies beyond the first, we'd renegotiate. It was less than my original ask, but it was infinitely more than I'd gotten in the original timeline. "I need to talk to Marcus," Claire said. "Take your time." 3 days later, Marcus called me himself. "This contract," he said, "the part about you retaining parental rights until you specifically waive them for each pregnancy. What exactly does that mean?" "It means that legally, any child born from my eggs is mine unless I explicitly give up those rights. If you and Claire use an embryo without my consent, I could sue for custody." That's insane. That's protection. Marcus, think about it from my perspective. These are my biological children. I'm entitled to have a say in what happens to them. You're not their mother. The surrogate carries them. Claire raises them. And I provide the genetic material that makes them exist. That deserves recognition. He was silent for a long time. "What if we agree to everything except the parental rights clause? What if you sign away all parental rights up front like a traditional donor?" "Then find another donor. Claire wants your eggs specifically." "Then Claire accepts my terms." We went back and forth for weeks. I didn't budge on the major points. Finally, reluctantly, they agreed to everything. Patricia reviewed the final contract and looked at me with something like awe. I've never seen anyone negotiate like this for egg donation, especially not with family. "I know what I'm worth," I said. The money hit my account 2 days before the retrieval procedure. $300,000, just sitting there. I stared at the number and felt a savage satisfaction. In the original timeline, they'd paid me $12,500 per retrieval and called it generous. The retrieval itself was the same nightmare I remembered. Hormone injections that made me feel crazy, bloating, pain, the uncomfortable stirrups and the cold instruments. But this time, I was fully informed. This time, I'd read every document. This time, I'd negotiated my own protection. They extracted 42 eggs, even more than the first time. "Excellent response," the doctor said. "This should give you plenty of embryos to work with." Claire and Marcus created 15 viable embryos, 15 potential children with my genetics and Marcus's. "We're going to implant one," Claire told me over the phone 3 months later, after I'd fully recovered. "We wanted to let you know, per the contract." "Which embryo?" I asked. "The highest quality one. Why?" "I want to meet with you and Marcus to discuss waiving parental rights for this specific pregnancy." There was a pause. "You're really going to make us go through this every time?" That was the deal. We met in Patricia's office. I'd asked her to be present for this conversation. Before I waive my parental rights to this child, I said, I want to ensure a few things. First, that the child will be raised in a stable, loving environment. Second, that I'll be allowed to be part of their life as their aunt. Third, that you'll tell them the truth about their genetic origins when they turn 12. Marcus looked uncomfortable. All of that is in the contract already. I know. I want to hear you both say it out loud. I want your verbal commitment in front of a witness. Claire's jaw was tight, but she nodded. We'll raise this child with love. You can be their aunt. We'll tell them the truth when they're 12. Do you promise that you'll never make them feel like there's something shameful or wrong about their genetic origins? I promise, Claire said. Marcus echoed, I promise. I pulled out a document, a waiver of parental rights specific to this pregnancy and this child. I'd had Patricia draft it. This waiver only applies to the child born from this current pregnancy, I explained. If you want to use another embryo in the future, we go through this process again. This is ridiculous, Marcus muttered. This is protection, I corrected. I signed the waiver. Claire implanted the embryo 2 weeks later. The pregnancy took. She was due in December 2018. Christopher Marcus Ashton was born on December 15, 2018, via surrogate. He had my eyes, my hair color, Marcus's nose. I saw him in the hospital, this tiny baby who was genetically mine but legally theirs. And I felt different than I'd felt in the original timeline. Because this time I'd had a choice. This time I'd protected myself. This time they couldn't take him from me because I'd given him to them on my terms. Do you want to hold him? Claire asked, and there was something wary in her voice. Like she was afraid I'd say yes, afraid I'd bond with him and change my mind. Of course, I said, and took my nephew into my arms. He was perfect. He was beautiful, and he was theirs because I'd made that choice. Thank you, Claire whispered, and for the first time, she sounded genuine. Thank you for giving us this. Over the next 2 years, I was the involved aunt I'd never gotten to be in the original timeline. I visited regularly, I brought gifts. I watched Christopher grow from an infant into a toddler, hitting all the same milestones I remembered. And then, in early 2020, Claire called me. We want to have another baby, she said. We'd like to use another one of your embryos. Here we go again. We went through the same process. Meeting in Patricia's office, my questions about the child's upbringing, their promises, my waiver of parental rights for this specific pregnancy. Sophia was born in October 2020, a girl this time, with my exact smile. I held her in the hospital and felt that same complex mix of emotions. She's mine, but she's not mine. I gave her to them. They're good parents. She'll be loved. We're done, Marcus told me when Sophia was 6 months old. 2 kids is perfect. We won't be using any more of the embryos. What will you do with them? I asked. He looked uncomfortable. Keep them frozen, I guess, just in case we change our minds. Your decision, I said. But remember, those embryos can't be used without my explicit consent. We know, Claire said with an edge of frustration. The contract is crystal clear. I thought that was the end of it. I thought I'd successfully navigated the minefield of my family's demands, protected myself, and ensured that Claire's children, my genetic children, would have good lives. But I'd forgotten one crucial thing about Claire. She always wanted more. In January 2023, 5 years after Christopher's birth and 2 years after Sophia's, I got a call from a genetic testing company. Ms. Shah, the representative said, we're calling about a potential match in our database. You've been flagged as a biological parent to a child born approximately 18 months ago. My blood went cold. What? Our records show that a child with 50% genetic match to you was born in July 2021. The parents registered the child's DNA with us for health screening purposes, and our system flagged you as a match. We're required to inform all parties when we discover unknown biological relationships. Who are the parents? I can't disclose that without their permission, but they've been notified of the match as well. You should expect to hear from them. I hung up and immediately called Patricia. They used another embryo, I said. Claire and Marcus used another embryo without my consent. Patricia's voice was razor sharp. Are you certain? I just got a call from a genetic testing company. There's a child born in July 2021 with my DNA. That's a breach of contract, a serious one. What can we do? First, confirm it's actually Claire and Marcus, then we sue for custody. Custody? Maya, listen to me carefully. If they used your embryo without your consent, you never waived your parental rights. That child is legally yours, not theirs. The world tilted. What? The contract was explicit. You retain parental rights until you specifically waive them for each pregnancy. If they implanted an embryo without going through that process, they had no legal right to that child. You do. I sat down heavily. Oh my God. We need to move fast. They're going to try to claim ignorance or argue that the previous waivers covered all potential children. We need to establish your claim before they can muddy the waters. Patricia, I can't just take a child from... They stole your genetic material, Patricia said flatly. They violated a legal contract. That child is yours, and you have every right to assert that. 2 hours later, Claire called. Maya, her voice was shaky. We need to talk. Yes, we do. We agreed to meet at a neutral location, a conference room Patricia arranged. Claire and Marcus showed up with their lawyer, the same slick woman who'd handled the original egg donation paperwork. This is all a misunderstanding, the lawyer started. A misunderstanding? Patricia's voice could have cut glass. Your clients used my client's genetic material without consent, in direct violation of a binding contract. The previous waivers were specific to individual pregnancies. The contract explicitly states that each embryo used requires separate negotiation and waiver. You know this. You helped draft it. Claire was crying. Maya, please. She's my daughter. Her name is Emma. She's almost 2 years old. You can't just... I didn't do anything, I said coldly. You did this. You implanted an embryo without my permission. You didn't think I'd find out? Or you didn't think I'd care? Marcus leaned forward. What do you want? More money? We can pay. This isn't about money. Patricia cut in. This is about parental rights. Maya never waived her rights to this child. Legally, she's the mother, not Claire. The room went silent. That's insane, Marcus finally said. We've been raising her for almost 2 years. We're on the birth certificate. Fraudulently, Patricia said. You listed Claire as the genetic mother when you knew she wasn't. Their lawyer looked sick. She knew we were right. What do you want? Claire whispered, looking at me. Please, Maya, I know we screwed up, but you can't take Emma from us. You can't. I looked at my sister, my older sister who'd spent my entire life taking from me, using me, manipulating me. And I felt nothing. No sympathy, no guilt, just cold, hard satisfaction. I want full custody, I said. Claire's face went white. No. You violated the contract. You used my genetic material without consent. That child is legally mine. She's been with us since birth. You can't just rip her away from the only parents she's known. You should have thought of that before you stole from me. Marcus stood up abruptly. We'll fight this. We'll take it to court. Please do, Patricia said. I'd love to see you explain to a judge why you violated a binding contract and committed fraud on a birth certificate. Emma knows us as her parents, Claire sobbed. She calls me mommy. She doesn't even know you exist. Then you should have followed the contract, I said. We left them in the conference room, Claire's sobs echoing behind us. The custody battle was brutal. Claire and Marcus threw everything they had at me, lawyers, money, media manipulation. They painted me as a vindictive woman trying to steal a child from her loving parents. But the law was on my side. The contract was ironclad. They'd violated it knowingly and deliberately. The judge's ruling came down 6 months later. I was Emma's legal mother. Claire and Marcus were granted visitation rights as her aunt and uncle, but custody went to me. This is a highly unusual case, Judge Morrison said from the bench. But the law is clear. Ms. Shaw never waived her parental rights to this child. The defendants used her genetic material without consent in direct violation of a binding contract. While I understand the emotional complexity of this situation, I cannot ignore the fundamental issue of consent and ownership of genetic material. Claire screamed when the ruling came down, literally screamed in the courtroom. Marcus had to drag her out while she sobbed. Mom called me that night. "How could you do this?" she cried. "That little girl belongs with Claire. That little girl is genetically mine, and Claire had no right to her. You're destroying this family. Claire destroyed it when she decided my eggs were hers to use however she wanted." I hung up on her. Emma came to live with me on a Tuesday. She was 22 months old, small for her age, with my dark hair and Marcus's blue eyes. She looked terrified as the social worker brought her into my apartment, clutching a stuffed rabbit. "Hi, Emma," I said softly, kneeling down to her level. "I'm Maya." She buried her face in the social worker's leg. "This is going to take time," the social worker, Janet, told me quietly. "She's confused. She doesn't understand why she can't go home to the people she thinks are her parents." "I know. Are you sure you're ready for this?" Was I ready? I'd spent 5 years building a case, fighting for this moment, destroying my relationship with my family to claim this child. And now she was here, looking at me like I was a stranger. Because I was. "I'm ready," I said. The first few weeks were hell. Emma cried constantly, calling for mommy and daddy, meaning Claire and Marcus. She wouldn't let me near her. She wouldn't eat. She barely slept. I started to understand what I'd actually done. I'd taken a child from the only parents she'd ever known. Yes, I was genetically her mother. Yes, legally I had every right. But to Emma, I was a kidnapper. "Is this worth it?" Aunt Ruth asked me one night when she came over to help. Emma had finally cried herself to sleep in her new bedroom, and I was sitting in my living room, emotionally destroyed. "I don't know," I admitted. "You could still give her back. Agree to shared custody, something that they stole from me," I said. "They used my eggs without permission." "They're not eggs anymore, Maya. That's a little girl in there." I knew that. God, I knew that. But I also knew that if I backed down now, Claire would never learn. My family would never respect my boundaries. They'd continue to take and take and take, and I'd never be anything more than a doormat. So I kept Emma, and slowly, painfully, we built a relationship. By 6 months, she'd stopped crying for Claire constantly. By a year, she called me Mama Maya and seemed genuinely attached to me. By 18 months, she'd started to settle into our life together. Claire and Marcus had visitation every other weekend. I watched Emma run to them, watched her hug Claire, watched the pain on my sister's face. "She's happy with you," Claire said once when she was dropping Emma off after a visit. It was the first time we'd spoken civilly in over a year. "She's adjusting." "I miss her every day." "Then you shouldn't have stolen from me." Claire flinched. I know we screwed up, but Maya, she's my daughter too. Not legally, but in every other way." "She was never your daughter," I said. "She was mine. And you knew it." Christopher and Sophia were 6 and 4 years old respectively when I won custody of Emma. The custody battle had been public enough that they'd heard things, understood that their little sister, they'd grown up thinking Emma was their sister, had been taken away. Per the contract, they were supposed to be told about their genetic origins when they turned 12. But events had accelerated that timeline. Claire and Marcus decided to tell them early when Christopher was 7 and Sophia was 5. They called me to be present for the conversation. "We think they should hear it from all of us," Marcus said stiffly. We weren't on good terms, would probably never be on good terms, but we were trying to be civil for the children's sake. We gathered in their Westchester living room, me, Claire, Marcus, and the 2 kids. Emma was with a babysitter for this. She was too young to understand any of this. "Kids," Claire started, her voice shaking, "we need to tell you something about your family." Christopher looked worried. Sophia was playing with a doll, not really paying attention. "You know Aunt Maya, right?" Marcus continued. Yeah, Christopher said. She's Emma's mom now. Right, well, Aunt Maya is special to you in another way, too. She's the one who gave Mommy and Daddy the parts that helped make you. Christopher frowned. What parts? How do you explain egg donation to a 7-year-old? Your genetics, I said quietly. The things that make you look the way you look, have the color eyes you have. Those came from me. So you're our mom? Sophia asked, suddenly paying attention. No, Claire said quickly, I'm your mom. I raised you, I love you, but Aunt Maya is your genetic mother. She donated eggs so Daddy and I could have you. Christopher was processing this, his little face scrunched up in confusion. But Emma lives with Aunt Maya now, why? This was the hard part. Because Mommy and Daddy made a mistake, Marcus said. We used Aunt Maya's eggs to make Emma without asking permission. That wasn't okay. So, Emma is our sister? Christopher asked. Yes, I said. Thus, all 3 of you are genetic siblings. You share DNA. But Emma lives with you. Yes. Why can't she live here? Because the law says she should be with her genetic mother, Claire explained, tears streaming down her face. And that's Aunt Maya. Sophia started crying, probably because Claire was crying. Christopher just looked confused and sad. Can we still see her? He asked. Of course, I said. You're her siblings. You'll always be in her life. But even as I said it, I wondered if I'd made the right choice. These children, all 3 of them, were caught in the middle of a war between adults. A war that I'd started by enforcing my legal rights. A war that was technically justified but emotionally devastating. 3 years after I won custody of Emma, Claire showed up at my apartment unannounced. I need to talk to you, she said. She looked older, worn down by years of legal battles and loss. I let her in. Emma, now 5 years old, was at kindergarten. I wanted to tell you, Claire started, that we're done fighting. Marcus and I talked, and we're not going to challenge the custody arrangement anymore. Okay, I said carefully, but I also wanted to say, she took a deep breath. I'm sorry for all of it, for pressuring you into the first place, for the way we handled the contract, for using that embryo without your permission, all of it. I stared at her. In all the years of this nightmare, Claire had never actually apologized. Why now? I asked. Because I've been watching Emma with you, and she's happy, she's well-adjusted, she loves you, and I realize that even though it kills me that she's not with us, you're a good mother to her. You could have been her mother, I said, if you'd just followed the contract. I know, I was arrogant. I thought the contract was just a formality, that you'd never actually enforce it. I thought you'd be the same passive Maya who always did what the family wanted. I'm not that Maya anymore. No, you're not. She paused. For what it's worth, I understand now why you did all of this. You were protecting yourself, and you were right to. We sat in silence for a while. Christopher asks about you, Claire finally said. He wants to know if you're mad at him and Sophia. What? No, of course not. He thinks the reason Emma lives with you is because we did something wrong and you're punishing all of us. My heart hurt. Can I talk to him? I was hoping you would. I started seeing Christopher and Sophia more regularly, outside of Emma's visitation schedule. We'd get ice cream, go to parks, have conversations about their lives and feelings. Are you my mom or my aunt? Christopher asked me once when he was 9 years old. Both, I said honestly. I'm your genetic mother, which means we share DNA, but your mom, Claire, is the one who raised you, who loves you every day. She's your real mom. But you're Emma's real mom. Because Emma didn't have a choice. She was put in a difficult situation. But yes, I'm her mom. Do you love us? Sophia asked. Like you love Emma? I love you, I said. Maybe differently than I love Emma because our relationships are different. But yes, I love you. Even though mom and dad made you mad? Even though. They seemed satisfied with that answer. Emma turned 10 in July 2031. We had a birthday party at my apartment. Her friends from school, Christopher and Sophia, even Claire and Marcus. It was surreal, watching my sister help set up decorations for a daughter she'd lost custody of years ago, but Emma had asked for her to be there, and I couldn't say no. She looks like you, Claire said to me quietly while Emma opened presents. She looks like herself, I corrected. Thank you for letting us be part of her life. She's their sister. They should know each other. Marcus came over holding a plate of cake. Maya, can I talk to you for a minute? We stepped into the hallway outside my apartment. I wanted to thank you, he said stiffly, for not completely shutting us out. I know you could have. Legally, you had every right. I'm not a monster, Marcus. I just wanted control over my own genetic material. I know that now. I didn't understand it then, but I do now. Do you? I challenged. Because you still think I stole Emma from you. No, he said slowly. I think we created an impossible situation and you did what you had to do to protect yourself. Emma being with you is a consequence of our actions, not yours. It was probably the closest thing to a real apology I'd ever get from Marcus. When Emma turned 12, I told her the whole story. We were sitting in our living room, just the two of us. She was eating popcorn and watching me with those blue eyes, Marcus's eyes, waiting for whatever serious conversation I'd called her in for as, You know you were born via surrogate? I started. Yeah, from Aunt Claire's eggs and Uncle Marcus's sperm. That's why I look like Christopher and Sophia. Not quite, I said gently. The eggs weren't Aunt Claire's, they were mine. Emma stopped eating. What? I donated eggs to Claire and Marcus years ago before you were born. They used those eggs to create Christopher and Sophia, and then they used another embryo without my permission to create you. So you're my genetic mom? Yes. And when I found out they'd used an embryo without consent, I sued for custody. That's why you live with me instead of with them. Emma was quiet for a long time, processing. So all this time, she finally said, Aunt Claire wasn't my aunt. She was... What? The woman who raised my siblings? She wanted to be your mother. She did love you, Emma. She still does. But legally, I'm your mother. Why didn't you tell me before? I wanted you to be old enough to understand the complexity. This isn't a simple story. Do Christopher and Sophia know? Yes. We told them years ago. And they're okay with it? They love you. That's what matters. Emma looked at me with those Marcus blue eyes and my heart-shaped face, and I saw her struggling with the revelation. Do you ever regret it? She asked. Taking me from them? It was a question I'd asked myself 1,000 times over the years. I regret that it had to happen at all, I said honestly. I regret that you were caught in the middle. But no, I don't regret fighting for my rights. Even if it hurt me? You were hurt by their choices, not mine. They're the ones who used my genetic material without permission. But I was the one who got taken from the only parents I knew. She wasn't wrong. God, she wasn't wrong. I'm sorry you went through that, I said. I'm sorry you were put in that position. But Emma, I'm not sorry you're my daughter. She thought about that. Are you my mom or my genetic mother? What do you want me to be? Both, she said finally. You're my mom, but Aunt Claire, she's something too. I remember her, from when I was little. I remember her holding me, singing to me. Of course she did. She loved you. Does she still? Yes, she'll always love you. Emma nodded slowly. Okay, I think I understand. Sort of. You don't have to understand it all. At once. This is complicated. Yeah, she said. Really complicated. By the time Emma was 15, she'd developed her own relationship with Claire and Marcus. She called them by their first names, maintained boundaries, but let them be part of her life in a way that worked for her. Christopher and Sophia, now 17 and 15, had fully embraced their genetic connection to me. They called me Biomom as a joke, asked me questions about inherited traits, wanted to know family medical history. "Do we get your metabolism?" Sophia asked me once. "Because Mom, Claire, has always been so worried about her weight, but you're naturally thin." "Genetics aren't everything," I told her. "But yes, you probably have similar metabolic patterns to me." "That's so cool. I have your cheekbones too." She did. Both Sophia and Christopher had distinctive features that were clearly from me, and it was strange and wonderful to see myself reflected in these teenagers who'd been raised by someone else. The family dinners were still awkward. Mom and Dad had eventually come around, mostly because they couldn't stand being estranged from their grandchildren. But they still looked at me like I'd committed some unforgivable sin. "You tore this family apart," Mom said to me once after a few glasses of wine. "No," I said calmly. "Claire tore it apart when she decided my body and my genetics were hers to exploit." "You could have been more flexible." "I could have been a doormat. I chose not to be." Aunt Ruth, 87 years old and still sharp as ever, cackled from across the table. "Good for you, Maya. Someone in this family finally grew a spine." The remaining embryos, there were 12 left, sat in frozen storage for years. Claire and Marcus paid the storage fees, but they never used them. They couldn't, not without my consent. When Emma turned 16, I got a call from the fertility clinic. "Ms. Shaw, we're reaching out about your stored embryos. The contract holders, the Ashtons, have indicated they want to stop paying storage fees. They're asking if you want to take over the fees or have the embryos destroyed." Destroyed. 12 potential children, just destroyed. "I'll take over the fees," I said. I didn't know what I'd do with them. I was 48 years old, single, focused on my career and raising Emma. But the thought of destroying those embryos felt wrong. They were mine. They'd always been mine. A year later, Emma came to me with a question. "What are you going to do with the embryos?" she asked. "I don't know. Why?" "Because they're my genetic siblings. Christopher and Sophia's siblings. If you destroy them, that's like destroying potential family." She had a point. "What do you think I should do?" I asked. "I think you should donate them to someone who wants kids. Someone who can't have their own." It was such a mature suggestion for a 17-year-old. That's actually a good idea. Over the next few months, I worked with the fertility clinic to set up an embryo donation program. The 12 embryos would be given to families struggling with infertility, with the understanding that any resulting children would be told about their genetic origins at age 18. It felt right. These potential children would exist, would have lives, would be loved by people who desperately wanted them. And in a way, it was the ultimate vindication of everything I'd fought for. These embryos were mine to control, mine to decide what happened to, mine to donate on my terms, not Claire's, not my family's. Mine. Emma graduated high school in 2034, top of her class, headed to Columbia University to study law. "I want to be like you," she told me. "I want to fight for people who can't fight for themselves." "You're already better than me," I said honestly. At her graduation party, Claire pulled me aside. "She's amazing," Claire said, watching Emma laugh with her friends. "You raised an amazing daughter." She raised herself, mostly. Don't do that. Don't minimize what you did. You gave her stability, education, love. You were the mother she needed. I looked at my sister, 50 years old, graying at the temples, carrying the weight of all her mistakes. "Do you regret any of it?" I asked. "Not just Emma, all of it, the way you treated me." Claire was quiet for a long moment. "I regret hurting you. I regret thinking I was entitled to your body, your genetics. I regret not seeing you as a person with rights and boundaries." She paused. "But I can't regret Christopher and Sophia. They're my children, regardless of genetics. And Emma, Even though I'm not her mother anymore, I'm grateful she exists. She does exist because of your choices, I acknowledged. Just not in the way you planned. No, not in the way I planned at all. We stood there, two middle-aged women watching a teenager celebrate her graduation, bound together by genetics and trauma and a complicated, painful love. I'm glad she has you, Claire said finally. I'm glad all three of them have you in their lives. Even if it's not the way I wanted, it's what they needed. It was as close to peace as we were ever going to get. Years later, when Emma was in law school and I was in my mid-50s, I got a message through the fertility clinic. One of the embryos I'd donated had resulted in a pregnancy. A baby girl had been born to a same-sex couple in Oregon who'd been trying to have a child for years. They wanted to thank me. We arranged a video call. The couple, Jen and Lisa, were warm and gracious, holding their 3-month-old daughter who had my nose and her genetic father Marcus's blue eyes. We can't thank you enough, Jen said, tears streaming down her face. We'd almost given up hope of having a biological child. What's her name? I asked. Claire, Lisa said, and my heart stopped. We named her after your sister. We know from the records that your sister was involved in creating these embryos, and we wanted to honor that. I didn't know what to say. These women had no idea about the complicated, painful history behind that name. That's very generous of you, I managed. We want to stay in touch if you're open to it, Jen said. Claire should know her genetic origins, know she has genetic siblings. I'd like that, I said. And I meant it. When I told Emma about baby Claire, she cried. Another sister, she said. I have another sister. You have a lot of genetic siblings now, I told her. 12 embryos were donated. Some of them might result in more children. That's wild. I could have siblings I don't even know about. You might. Is that okay? She thought about it. Yeah, I think it's okay. It means the embryos didn't go to waste. They became people. People who are wanted and loved. When I was 60 years old, I retired from law practice. I'd spent 42 years as a lawyer, 25 of those specializing in reproductive rights. I'd helped hundreds of women protect themselves from egg donation exploitation. I'd drafted ironclad contracts. I'd fought custody battles. I'd been the nightmare every fertility clinic and intended parent feared, the donor who knew her rights and wouldn't be manipulated. And I'd won, every single time. Emma was 31 by then, a successful attorney herself, specializing in genetic rights law. Christopher was 33, a pediatrician. Sophia was 31, a genetic counselor. All three of them had careers influenced by their own complicated genetic origins. The 12 embryos I'd donated had resulted in 8 live births over the years. 8 children scattered across the country, all genetically related to Emma, Christopher, and Sophia. Some of the families stayed in touch, some didn't, but they all knew the truth about their origins. Claire was 71 when she died. Pancreatic cancer, quick and brutal. I stood at her funeral surrounded by her children, our children, and felt a complicated grief. She'd been my tormentor and my sister. She'd used me and eventually respected me. She'd given me both my greatest pain and my greatest purpose. She loved you, Marcus said at the funeral. He was 73, frail but still sharp. Even when she was angry at you, even when you were fighting in court, she loved you. I know, I said. Did you ever love her back? I do. But I loved myself more, and that's what made all the difference. Emma delivered the eulogy. She spoke about Claire with compassion and honesty, acknowledging both her love and her flaws, her generosity and her selfishness. Claire taught me something important, Emma said from the podium. She taught me that love without respect is meaningless. She loved me, but she didn't respect my mother's rights, and that cost her everything she wanted most. It was a brutal truth to speak at a funeral, but it was the truth. Nonetheless, I'm 67 now. Emma has 2 children of her own, naturally conceived, no reproductive technology needed. She's married to a wonderful man who treats her like an equal partner. Christopher has 3 kids. Sophia has 1. I'm a grandmother 7 times over, 2 children who carry my genetics in varying degrees. And sometimes, late at night, I think about that other timeline. The one where I didn't die and get sent back. The one where I stayed passive, let my family exploit me, gave away 4 cycles of eggs for $100,000 and no legal protection. In that timeline, I would have been the forgotten aunt, the woman who helped but wasn't valued, the genetic mother who had no rights and no recognition. In this timeline, I'm the matriarch, the woman who fought back, the mother who protected herself and, in doing so, protected her daughter. Was it worth it? The pain, the family fracture, the years of legal battles? I look at Emma, successful and happy and secure in who she is. I look at Christopher and Sophia, who know the truth about their origins and love me anyway. I look at the 8 other children created from my donated embryos, all living happy lives with families who wanted them desperately, and I think, yes, it was worth it. Because I learned the most important lesson anyone can learn. Your body is yours, your genetics are yours, your choices are yours, and no one, not family, not society, not even people you love, gets to take that away from you. I fought for that principle. I lost relationships for it. I made enemies for it. But I won. In every way that matters, I won. And that makes everything, all the pain, all the struggle, all the loneliness worth it.